Welcome to another edition of Footprints in American History. Today we're going to talk about who really was the first in flight. Now we're going to discuss 5 different people, but really 4 because the Wright brothers are 2. We're going to discuss about Alberto Santos-Dumont, Gustave Whitehead, Orville Wilbur Wright, and Lawrence Hargrave, who would be the first in flight. Okay, we're going to start off with Alberto Santos-Dumont. Now, this was a very flamboyant person. He had emigrated from Brazil to France. He was living in Paris. He loved the cameras. He loved the attention. Now, he experimented with a lot of lighter-than-air aircraft. He'd also dealt with hot air balloons and dirigibles. He actually loved flying to his favorite restaurant. He had an apartment in Paris. He used to take his, I believe it was a dirigible. He'd fly to his favorite restaurant, tether it to a light pole, and go inside to the restaurant to eat. Now, a lot of people with him preferred the argument that he would be the first in flight. He flew a dirigible around the Eiffel Tower in 1901. On October 23rd, 1906, he flew a biplane 200 feet, 15 feet above the ground in front of a crowd in Paris. This was 3 weeks later. He flew 726 feet in his aircraft. Now, one of the reasons that they want to argue this instead of the Wright brothers is because he took off with his wheels unassisted. Apparently, the Wright brothers had their plane propped up and it went off a rail, and that was to have the winds blowing out the Atlantic Ocean to help propel it. So that was one of the arguments that he said. So that was with Alberto Santos-Dumont. Okay, the second person we're going to discuss is Gustave Whitehead. Now, Gustave Whitehead was a German immigrant who was living in Connecticut. His first flight apparently was August 14th, 1901. I'm getting kind of conflicting reports on what I read, that it was witnessed by a report for the Bridgeport Sunday Herald. They say that it made not only that newspaper in Bridgeport, but it made several newspapers internationally. He did do some flights between 1901 and 1902. He also did several between 1903 and 1911. They say he also flew near populated areas. He flew apparently even over neighborhoods where people saw him. However, there were some issues with him. One was that he didn't have a lot of money. He had to work jobs. So when he did any of his inventions, he had to do it part-time. And so he didn't have a lot of the money. And so the story goes is that he flew half a mile and landed with no damage in 1901. And they also, according to this, said Jane's All the World Aircraft, which is pretty much the Bible as far as aircraft information, they said that in 2013 they recognized him as the first in powered flight. Now, this sounds very easy to say that he was the first. However, the only problem though was that there's a story that there was 2 eyewitnesses to this flight. When they went looking to verify this story, one of these people they never found. They had no idea. He just disappeared. I don't know if this was the reporter that they talked about in the earlier report, but the other one, when they asked him to verify the story, he denied it completely. However, later on, he said that he was angry with Gustave Whitehead, that he owed him some money. That's the reason why he denied the story. Also, supposedly the Smithsonian had signed a contract in 1948 with the Wright brothers, acknowledging them as the first in flight. That was a binding contract. With it, they also received the plane. And if you ever want to see the Wright brothers' original plane, all you have to do is go to Washington, D.C. It hangs in the National Air and Space Museum. Number 3, we're going to talk about the Wright brothers. Now, as far as the Wright brothers go, they kept very detailed information. Gustave Whitehead, part of the problem was documentation And so that's what they were saying, was that he didn't have enough documentation, and that was one of the reasons for the argument with the Wright brothers. Now, the Wright brothers, on December 17th, 1903, Orville flew the plane, Wilbur ran alongside it. They shot it down a rail and then glided it 120 feet, which was 12 seconds. The witnesses to this flight included an employee from the U.S. Life-Saving Service, and they used that for evidence. However, there was no other people to this. Anytime you see the video, this was probably from the first public flight, which I believe was 1908. Yes, it was 1908. However, with the Wright brothers, one of the reasons also for the argument in their case was that they kept very detailed information. They kept tremendous documentation of everything. They also were going through the patenting process and seeking contracts. So part of this was also they wanted to make sure that everything was done right, which was to protect themselves and make sure that they got credit properly. Now, with the Wright brothers, a lot of people believed that because it was a manned aircraft, it was heavier than air, that this was the reason to give them the credit for the first flight. Also, 1905, a year before Santos-Dumont, his flight, the Wright brothers had taken a flight that flew for 40 minutes. Also, I'd like to also talk about the birthplace of aviation. Now, some people say that it was North Carolina because of the Wright brothers. Ohio says it because the Wright brothers came from Ohio, but North Carolina was where they did it. And incidentally, a lot of people will tell you, and you're going to see most documentation saying that Kitty Hawk was where the first Wright brothers flight took place. That is actually true and not true. Now, at the time, Kill Devil Hills was just a series of sand dunes. However, now Kill Devil Hills is a town. That was technically where the first flight took place. However, also the telegraph station where they wanted to get the information, that also was where they had to go to relay the information to the world that we had a successful first flight. Now, in the case of Connecticut, the governor in 2013 signed a proclamation stating that Connecticut was the birthplace of aviation, but that was because of the Gustave Whitehead argument. The fourth person we're going to talk about is Lawrence Hargrave. Now, Lawrence Hargrave lived in Australia. As far as Australia goes, Lawrence Hargrave is the first in flight, and there is a valid argument for him as well. Now, on November 12, 1894, he connected 4 box kites together and flew them 16 feet above the ground. He had experimented for years on wing shapes and an engine that could carry a person, and there was a lot of argument for that. However, because it was box kites that he connected together, that's one of the reasons why a lot of people don't necessarily recognize him. However, he did do a lot of experiments in this, and he found that the box kites actually were more stable than wings. And so with him, he preferred to do from that direction. He didn't really like gliders either. He focused mostly on the box kites instead because of the stable distribution throughout. One final thing I wanted to state about Lawrence Hargrave was that he also invented an engine, a 3-cylinder engine, which ended up being the prototype that went into aircraft and was used for up to 50 years. So there is a lot of credit to Lawrence Hargrave for his contributions to the aviation world. Australia even put his image on their money. So my name's Jeff Dial. Thank you for watching the video. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Please share the video, tell all your friends about it, and also ring the bell if you want notifications of future videos. Also, check out our Facebook channel. We have also notifications, not only future videos, but you'll find a lot of information about previous videos as well. In the meantime, thanks so much. Have a great day. Fair winds and following season.